and for the effect that you will have on the collective reality as well. See, it's not just a personal thing. I mean, it's not just for you to experience the universe from your unique perspective, although that's a big part of it. But how you interact with the universe also affects other people, how they perceive your interaction with the universe. So it's a very holistic thing.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
That is interesting.
My biggest problem is empathy. I mean, when I see that kid blown up in Gaza, I feel it. I mean, I really feel it in my heart.
Empathy is the key. Empathy is the key to everything. What I try to explain to people is that the universe, the very fabric, the very energetic stuff itself, the matrix that makes up this universe is compassion, and your interface with that compassion is empathy. But having empathy, it isn't just empathy for the victims, it's empathy for the perpetrator as well. It's empathy for all things. I believe there is only one law, and that is absolute unconditional love and service to the creation.
I completely agree. You can't just be empathetic and compassionate towards the little kid that's being blown up. You have to be empathetic and compassionate to the people that are hurting you, to the people that...
Absolutely. I mean, I feel as much pity for the perpetrator as I do for the victim. They might be what some perceive to be a very evil person, but what would it take to make a human mind do that? How polarized must this particular individual be to carry out that act? That's the part that fascinates me. And it's as Ben so eloquently put it out, Ben Stewart in Kymatica, as he so eloquently pointed out, people will see these crimes. They will see someone committing an act against someone else, and then they take it upon themselves to go and hurt the perpetrator of that crime. So the perpetrator of this crime might be doing what they're doing on an unconscious level. They might just be a naturally cruel person, and what they're doing is unconscious. And yet here we have a person who pertains to care to others, and he is going to do exactly the same thing as this person was doing, only he's going to raise it to a whole new level of conscious cruel behaviour that he is willing to carry out against this person who is committing this crime. So it's exactly the same thing, only it's conscious that he's doing it. So this is a whole new level, and these are the people that are going to have an even harder time of coming to terms with who and what they are and coming to terms with the shadow. I think Freeman wanted to interject with something here.
When we look to the script, and that's where a lot of my research comes in, very handy, and I see, of course, W, and I predicted that he would be an evil emperor because the letter W was the sign of the fallen angels. And so his whole purpose was to make you angry, and the fact that he was forced into office was supposed to make you angry. And so it's this, when you see the script, the Princess Warrior programming in your Walmart aisles, then you see that this is what they want from you. They want you seeking angry justice, angry vengeance. They want you programmed to this type of, they wanted 9/11 truth. They wanted people up in arms, you know. So when you take that into consideration, when you see that W was a plant there to make you angry, and on one level you can have empathy because here was the poor son of the head of the CIA. You better believe he's never really had a thought of his own except for in rebellion, you know, and all of his partying and cheerleading and such that he did. But at the same time, you can't blame George W. Bush. One, I doubt he even wanted to be president, and two, he had been mind programmed from the CIA from the beginning, you know, before he was even born. So you can't blame him. Same with the pop stars that are putting out all the music that's being written for them. Lady Gaga, Britney. I mean, I hold Lady Gaga a little more responsible for her actions than I do Britney, because Britney was kind of just thrown into it, and Lady Gaga seems to be an active participant.
Right.
So this is the programming that they want you angry. So then, you know, you've got to know that your defense is to not be angry.
Absolutely.
I completely agree with that.
Infinite love is the only truth. Everything else is illusion.
Even for your enemies, which is the hardest thing to do, is to love the person.
They're creating your enemies, right?
Right,
You know,
exactly. They're creating the enemies. So you just need to look at them as you do a puppet on someone's hand. You can't get mad at the puppet. You get mad at the person whose hand is controlling the puppet. So.
Well, that brings an interesting question, though. How do we feel about the people who are controlling the puppets?
Good question.
They're just as polarized as everybody else. That's the thing. A lot of these people are so given over to dark energies, they've just become addicted to that way of life. But you can't blame them for it. I mean, a lot of these people are born into these families. They're raised to be this way. And this particular bloodline, the ruling bloodline, these people seem to be very much devoid of empathy. And I don't think that they consciously do evil. I just think it's just the way they are. It's just the way they've been raised. It's just the way they've been bred almost, I guess.
And this goes way back to the Sumerian, to the Egyptian cultures. I mean, these are all bloodlines that trace back there, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they go way, way, way back, and they've never broken the bloodline. It's always remained solid.
So do you think this reptilian, I guess this is where they're operating from the reptilian brain, is that connected to Anunnaki, places like that?
Well, this is a very deep rabbit hole to go down. You're kind of trapping me here. I try to avoid these issues on my show. People tend to ask me questions about alien, and I sort of colourfully sidestep. I try to remain very on the fence with all of that stuff. I have my own personal beliefs on what's going on. I might hand this question over to Freeman. He can answer this one.
Honestly, I feel like our focus should go beyond that right now. We could get into that, and we have, and there's a lot of research, but all of the people we have to study are sketchy. We have Sitchin, we have Lawrence Gardner, we've got lists of people that seem to be interlinked with the entire mind control spectrum that we have. So we can't go honestly by any of those details. We can use them because we know they have to present the truth, but yet leave out what they don't want known. And so we can see that there's manipulation in that whole ancient story.
I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around the fact that human beings can do this, though. I mean, what drives human beings to commit these atrocities?
Well, it all depends on what you mean. Because when I look around, I don't see human beings perpetrating the atrocities except for those that have been put through mind control institutions such as the military. And then they're just screwed. When we're looking at a very small fraction of the world when we're seeing the atrocities. It really is very small compared to the rest of humanity. And so that's what makes it difficult, because we only publicize the atrocities. And then even in our entertainment, we get nothing but more atrocities. So we're seeing a view of humanity that's completely false. The BP oil spill was meant to demoralize you. These things are meant to demoralize you. Avatar was meant to demoralize the military. And so it's all mind pattern programming. It's all programming and media that has instituted this mindset that humans are these horrible, vicious creatures, because that's all that they report on,
Right, yeah. Absolutely.
So what I'm seeing now is that humanity's at this point. We're at the end of the world, as it were, and we're wondering what to do. How do we resolve this situation? And what we've really come down to is that it goes just to the basics, the such basics, that humanity really needs to understand that they have been under a form of mind control for millennia, and that this civilization that we exist in is not the product of human endeavor. It is a controlled mechanism that's been crafted by a particular priestcraft throughout time, and we can prove this. So this is why you have pentagrams in the street plans of Washington, D.C. These are the men that had the ability to make their imagination real and therefore cast their spell on all of the world. And so now we live under their aesthetic terrorism, their domination of buildings and architecture that tell us they are real because they have made themselves real. So we now understand this. We've recognized this situation that the zoo we live in was not crafted by our hands. So now we begin to say, okay, what do we want out of this situation? And what we found, because we are in a time of crisis, is that we have to start with the basics. People need to start permaculture gardens. They need to turn their back lawns into gardens. And even if you're an American and therefore transient, because there's not very many people in America that actually own the property that they live on, at least in all the towns I've ever lived in, everyone are renters. And so they don't want to institute any sort of progress on the property. And this is a mindset that we're going to have to set down and forget. And we're going to have to dig into our gardens and start to plant food, because this is the one thing next to friendship, next to community, that's going to help. And we don't need to go and seek the vipers and try to cut the heads of the snakes. What we need to do is build the garden that we desire to live in. So it's not our job to go out and attack them. It's our job to rebuild and to reconstruct reality and make it real.
But every time we build the garden, though, they come by and they cut the garden down.
You've got to keep building them anyway. This is the thing. So we can talk about who's in charge. I mean, I could sit here, I could spend time, I could convince you that it's reptilians. I could convince you that it's the Jesuits, that it's the Jews, that it's the Vatican conspiracy, that it's multi-dimensional aliens, that it's the Illuminati, that it's Club of Rome, that it's anything. We can go down all these rabbit holes, and we can spend weeks and months researching who and what they may be. But at the end of the day, the world is still in the state that it's in, and it's probably worse because we've neglected it while we've been looking into who they may be. What we need to do is focus in the now and start improving our situation. We need to really start concentrating on solutions. I believe that once we implement some of these solutions, who they are will become very apparent. We just have to look for those who scream the loudest. But putting in gardens everywhere, I think, is the key. I mean, if everybody did this, even if you're renting a place, put in a garden for the next people. And eventually you'll come around and you'll get to a place and someone has put in a garden for you. I mean, it all comes back in the end, and what goes around comes around. So I think it's one of the best things we can actually absolutely do. Everything that they have done with all the systems that they have in place have been done to divide society. And there's a real clue in that all we have to do is unite, build community, and we can defeat the whole thing. And that's the only way we can do it, is by building community. It's got to be done on a grassroots level. You can't enter into the system and think you can bring the system down from within. You've simply got to build community and step away from the system.
Well, here's a good example of that. The mosque that they just built in New York City, that was one of those things that they put in there to divide, right?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's just the best example I could come up with off
there's
the
nothing
bat.
wrong with having a mosque. I mean, if people want to practice religion, they can practice their religion, but where they put the mosque and all that, I mean, yeah, that was obviously done to create a stir, obviously.
Right. We have a few questions from the chat room. One of them is, what do you do if your emotions get control of you when you get angry and you cannot feel empathy? Like adrenaline and other endorphins are just running through you and you can't control yourself.
Well, to be honest, that just doesn't happen to me anymore, to be honest. I think that all of these experiences are opportunities for self-reflection. I really do. Whenever you feel any strong emotion, it's an opportunity. It's a mirror. It's an opportunity for you to look within yourself. I mean, go outside and scream. Do something. Go out and pick up a hammer and smash a piece of tin or something. Do something. Get it out. I mean, just go and dig a hole. Do something. It'd be best if you didn't go and hit somebody or hurt somebody or break anything valuable.
Right.
But embrace that emotion. Look at that emotion. Understand why you're feeling that emotion. Try to understand whether you're feeling this rage because of fear for your own safety, because of love or empathy for the victim in the situation. A lot of people get angry, and if they really look deep at themselves, they'll find that it's over fear. Fear is usually the reason they get angry. Usually their belief system is threatened, or sometimes they might see a crime perpetrated against someone and it gets them angry, but then again, it's that same thing. It's them refusing to face that perhaps what they just saw perpetrated may exist within themselves, and they don't want to face that, and so they raise it to a new level of conscious violence and they attack the perpetrator. They project their guilt of themselves onto someone else. That might be a very hard thing for people to come to terms with, but I believe from my experience that that's what people do, and I think that all these situations are opportunities for self-reflection. And I just don't get angry anymore. I find it very, very difficult to be angry or to ever get in a bad mood anymore, just from the understanding that I have of reality. And it hasn't been an overnight thing. Just the more I began to understand how energy works and more began to understand the nature of the universe, looked into the work of people such as Dr. Bruce Lipton, for example, who proves that the human body is simply a biological computer. Once you understand this stuff, it's very, very difficult to get angry and to get upset or to get judgmental with people.
Here's another interesting question from the chat. What about community currencies, off-grid communities? How would you have a currency system, or would you have a currency system?
Ultimately, I'd like to abolish all currency systems, to be honest. I mean, I can see that some people are used to handing things around to each other and using things to trade with, so that's okay. We can have money. Money itself isn't inherently bad. The problem with our money at the moment is that it's